Hey guys, Cam here from TodaysiPhone.com, and I have a very unusual comparison here. Now this is the BlackBerry Q10 and this is the iPhone 5, and what I wanted to do was essentially compare the two, because obviously you'll know that in the past for business users BlackBerry was the #1 choice. In current day usage and statistics and sales figures, everything is pointing towards iPhone being the new king of business use. And now if we talk about design first, what you'll notice first with the BlackBerry is that unlike every other smartphone, it is not a rounded rectangle. In other words, not all its edges are straight. Now you'll see you've got a nice curved bottom edge here and the same on the top, and the flat edges on the side. I really like the design actually. And if you look on the back, you'll notice that the back is also curved around the edges, which means that actually it's very comfortable to hold in hand. And thanks to the texture that's on the back, it feels like it's designed to be used as well. Now, you can't really talk about design between these two without talking about the removable back cover, removable battery, and obviously the expandable micro SD card slot in there. The back comes off very easily, but it also fits very snugly and doesn't come off randomly in your pocket like they used to. Now, if you look on the back, you'll see that on the front, in the top left hand corner here, you've got the camera, 8 megapixel, and obviously the LED flash. And then on the top, you've got a solid lock button, the volume switch up and down, and then obviously your selection key. Not selection key, that is your BlackBerry key, which you can program to do various things, but normally they are programmed for voice controls. And obviously the big talking point here is the 4-row keyboard, which is a full QWERTY keypad. The keys are typically BlackBerry. They've got a nice curved edge, like a tapered edge, and depending on which side of the keyboard you're using, they curve to the outside of that thumb. All in all, it's a very solid feeling device, and one thing I really liked was that actually instead of using plastic around the outside edges here, it's all metal, and it gives it a really good sturdy industrial feel. Now in terms of dimensions, the iPhone is longer than the BlackBerry by a few millimeters. You can see the difference there if I put them next to each other. But then again, it is also smaller and it's thinner. I mean, it's narrower in hand, but then there was no way BlackBerry were going to be able to create a full QWERTY keypad phone in a form factor that was as narrow as the iPhone. In terms of actually picking it up and holding it, the iPhone does feel really light, really thin, and does feel really great. Again, made out of glass and aluminium, as you know already. It does, again, it feels solid. But then I think that's where the difference comes in. They're so different in terms of what they look like. It shows exactly what they were meant for. Now, the iPhone is obviously the phone for the masses. The BlackBerry is the workhorse. It's got physical keys which feel fantastic when you type. The build feels solid and it just wants to be used. The actual design of it makes you want to pick it up and use it. So in that sense, it does make a fantastic communications device. If we go on to display, in terms of pixel density, they're both very similar. The iPhone has 326 pixels per inch. So if we zoom in a little bit to the displays, I wanted to show you the slight difference here. Now you can see both of them are very, very clear. There's not really any pixelation or anything, and that's because they are both very similar in terms of pixel count. Now, there is the old argument of Super AMOLED versus LCD. Now, obviously the LCD one is the iPhone, which means that you get a much more natural color representation. You'll find that in terms of viewing angles on the BlackBerry, if you turn it away from the optimal viewing angle, you'll see that the color does change so slightly. Now it does tend to go blue even if you're not anywhere near a blue table. It just does. You can see it's not reflecting any blue because obviously it's pointing up towards my beige ceiling, and it's still, you'll see that color does shift. And that's something that I found with a lot of AMOLED displays, including the Galaxy S4. But if you're looking straight at the phone, you're not going to see that. What you are going to see is a very crisp and very clear display. Now, one thing that is quite unusual is if I open it up, this is obviously where it falls short because it's a square display. Watching videos on it is not really optimal. You'll see it only takes up half a display. Let's just check out Jake on TodaysiPhone.com. Now that's on that. Now obviously the iPhone's display is a 16.9-inch display sideways, so any video content will fill that display and you get a much more immersive view. So the BlackBerry, again, is not a media device, really. You can play videos and music on there, but it's not really primarily for that. Now, in terms of specs, performance-wise, they've both got dual-core processors. This one's got Snapdragon 1.5 GHz. This one has a 1.2 GHz Apple A6. This one's got 2 GB of RAM. This one's got 1 GB of RAM, but then that's to do with the operating systems. This one has multitasking, proper multitasking, whereas this just remembers the apps in the background as such, as it always has done from iOS 4, I believe. But in terms of general day-to-day use, there is nothing about the BlackBerry that makes me think this is a slow device. It's quick enough, it does everything as it should do. And so in terms of hardware, performance, everything like that, it is a great phone, and there's nothing that makes the iPhone stand out that much. Obviously, they're built for different things, like I've mentioned already, but in terms of which one does things better, they both perform very, very well. Now, I'll go quickly onto camera. They both got 8-megapixel cameras, they both got LED flash. And one thing I did notice actually was that in low light performance, the BlackBerry wasn't as good as the iPhone. But in general, day shots, what you will see some differences, but sharpness is very, very similar. Now, battery life on both of them is remarkably different, and this is one area where the BlackBerry really outshines. And I wanted to talk about two areas really where the BlackBerry outshines the iPhone. One of them is battery life. I consistently got 2 to 3 days from this BlackBerry on a full charge from general use. Now we'll talk about the reasons for why that may be later on, but it's got a 2100 milliamp hour battery in there, whereas the iPhone is about 1400, so it's missing about 700 milliamp hours compared to the BlackBerry. And also signal strength was remarkably better. Now overall, BlackBerry's biggest shortcoming is the App Store. It's BlackBerry World. Now see, if I go into the home page and you look through here, you can see it does have some content on there, have some trending games, but none of them are anywhere near as good as what you'll get on the iPhone. They're just not. And what I will say, without meaning to sound too biased, obviously I work for an iPhone site, so obviously it's my personal preference. But without sounding too biased, just opening up the homepage of the App Store compared to BlackBerry World and seeing the quality of the apps available just there and then without having to search for anything, the difference is remarkable. There's just there's really nothing on there, and there's so many apps that I use on my iPhone day to day that I just could not go without. It's just something that's the case. I've got so many on there that I need that are not available yet on BlackBerry, and they're all on my screens there, things that I use all the time. And that's something that's going to have to change if BlackBerry wants to survive. It's just a fact of the matter, really. Overall, if I'm going to give you a quick finishing kind of statement about the BlackBerry and the iPhone, what I will say is that although the BlackBerry will never replace my iPhone because it lacks so much, in terms of apps at least, it's made a really great communications device, it's made a great secondary device, and I have loved using it for texting and emailing, and that's largely just to do with the one feature that we mentioned right at the start, and that is the keyboard. The physical keyboard to me is always going to be better than any other virtual keyboard, no matter how good, even SwiftKey. I would rather use a physical keyboard than SwiftKey. So for texting and emailing, this has been fantastic, and for battery life and signal, like I said, all the stuff that you need to have a device that's going to last you for a day and is going to do a job. It's something of a workhorse, whereas obviously the iPhone is built primarily for playing games, using apps, watching videos. It's much more of a multimedia device, so in that sense, that's why they're so different. One of them does its job fantastically well, and the other one does its job fantastically well. But in terms of most people wanting to have one device that does it all, sadly the BlackBerry is not that device. It doesn't have everything it needs to compete yet with the top Android phones and top iPhones, and hopefully that's something that's going to change. But that's not to say I didn't like the BlackBerry. I think it's a fantastic device, but it will not replace my iPhone. If you want to ask me any questions, you can do. I'm at TIP_cam, and I will see you again soon.